Hi guys, let's talk a little bit about density. We've talked about it before, you've even calculated it in the lab and in general, we've worked on it. But I want you to think for a minute what it really is. Density is a number that represents how much mass you have in a certain amount of space. And really, because you're going to find density by dividing your mass by your volume, what you're really finding is how much mass fits in 1 centimeter cubed of space. Now, 1 centimeter cubed of space is smaller than the boxes I have drawn here, but that wouldn't be very nice to look at on a tutorial, so I've enlarged them. 1 centimeter is pretty short, it's about 1 centimeter is like there, maybe, if we're lucky. And so a 1 centimeter cubed box would be a lot smaller than this. However, you get the basic idea. Different substances have different relative weights if we make them all the same size. I could have a stack of foam that weighs more than a stack of iron, but I would need more foam to do it, right? I would need a giant pile of foam and a small pile of iron in order to have my foam's weight be bigger than my iron's weight. If everybody has the same volume, though, no contest. Iron's always going to win. And that's because there's always a certain amount of mass packed into a piece of iron of the same size. That ratio is always constant. For every centimeter cubed of space that I have of iron, I always get 7.8 grams of mass in there. And that has to do with the size of the atoms and how many subparticles are actually packed into the atoms of iron themselves. So density is a very useful characteristic property because of this. You can figure out what substance you have, or come close to figuring out what substance you have by figuring out how dense it is. And it's pretty interesting because mass alone wouldn't tell you, volume alone wouldn't tell you, but when you put the two together, somehow you get a characteristic property. Now, the worksheets that I've given you to work on in class are mostly just calculation sheets. And this should be fairly simple for you, especially if you're in algebra right now. You should really be able to rearrange your formula without any trouble. But for those of you who have trouble rearranging formulas, I gave you this little triangle. Let me see if I can explain how this triangle works to you. Basically, what I do, and I'll show you without the triangle first, is that I know that density equals mass divided by volume. And because I'm pretty good at math, what I do is if I want to figure out what volume is equal to, I put my density over 1 so that I have a fraction equal to a fraction, and then I cross multiply. So that would give me 1 times m would be m equals d times v. So I know that mass equals density times volume. And if I wanted to get my volume, I would divide both sides by d, and I would get m divided by d equals volume. So I've just rearranged the formula using my algebra skills. Some students have trouble with that, so let's see if there's another way that you could do it. Using this triangle, you can just kind of, if you're looking at any letter on the triangle, the other 2 letters will tell you what to do. So let's start with density. If I'm looking at D, what do? I take mass and I divide by volume, because m is on top, v is on the bottom. That's how I know that. Let's say I'm not looking at density, but instead looking at mass. And I'll just use a different color for my mass. So here's mass right here. So what is mass equal to? It's equal to density times volume. And I know it's multiplying and not dividing because this little thing is not between my 2 variables. What if I wanted to do volume? Well, I'll use a different color. Volume is mass divided by density. And I know that because mass is on top and density is on the bottom. Some people really find this particular triangle very useful. And if you're one of them, all I have to do is memorize the triangle. M is on top, dv on the bottom. So that should help you work your way through some of the problems in the worksheets that I gave you. And then some of the worksheets are just asking you to put things in order and identify what density you have and stuff like that. It's really just lots and lots and lots of practice to help you get to the point where on your final exam, when I'm going to be asking you about questions about density, you can do these questions without thinking too much. And hopefully you'll start doing them and you'll find that the worksheet goes really fast. Of course, if you're sitting there and struggling, you should call me over so that I can help you. Okay guys, I'll see you in class.